was absolutely delighted to meet the wonderful Tina Mendes earlier on this week. What really occurred to me with Tina's story is, if ever there was someone who could prove just how effective marijuana is as a treatment. Hello Tina, how you doing?
Not too bad, thank you. And yourself?
Awesome, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
You're welcome. I'd like to thank you very much for mentioning Winston Matthews. It is very sad what's happened, and it was a very sad day for the system and the way things work within England and within the United Kingdom. Very sad day indeed for the justice system, which there was no justice in the end.
Well, we've taken this particular cause up as one of our champion causes, much like the Holly Gregg and Robert Greene, and we will be mentioning it regularly on our show because, you know, this, again, I think in terms of showing utter perversion within our society, just denying people the right to keep themselves healthy naturally, it makes no sense. I don't understand it, and I don't think anybody should just be complacent about the situation. We need to educate people as to the benefits of marijuana and why we should all be growing this stuff. And, you know, I was so delighted to have our conversation earlier on this week. You know, it was a true honor to speak to someone who had so many unbelievable ailments, and you were treating them all with cannabis. So
yes, I am.
Just want to go into, let's start from the top. Take us through absolutely everything, exactly what they are.
Okay, well, I suffer from Charcot-Marie-Tooth type 1A. That is also known to most people, possibly most of the listeners out there, as muscle atrophy. I'll explain exactly what CMT is. CMT, it's basically got to do with your nerves, the neuropathic nerves, and it takes different forms. It's characterized by loss of muscle tissue, touch sensation in the feet, ankles, legs, and it progresses over time. I've also had pes capers operations where my feet were actually clawing, and they had to do surgery. So for a whole 12 months, I was in and out of hospital like a yo-yo. I was on a lot of medication due to this particular medical issue. Also, it was 6 months between each operation, so it was a lot for my body to take, and I was on a lot of morphine at the time while I was at the hospital. And then once sent home, I was on Valium, I was on Tramadol, you name it. Really, there were so many of them that you lose count. Really, all I remember is that I used to take 36 tablets a day at the time. Following on from CMT, really, because there's not much to say when it comes to CMT apart from what I've said. I also suffer from primary parathyroidism, which is when one of your glands in your throat, you've got about 4 or 5 glands within the back of your throat. And one of them was actually taking calcium from my bones and distributing it into my blood to the point that they could not get blood out of me. I then had a parathyroid removal, and ever since my calcium has been controlled with no medication at all whatsoever. Let me get that in. I believe just by using cannabis. So yes, I do class that the parathyroidism is also balanced and leveled out for no need of vitamin D. So yes, I do believe that cannabis does help with that. I also suffer from hypermobility syndrome, which hypermobility syndrome affects my joints, my tendons and so on and so forth. Maybe not a lot of people have heard of hypermobility syndrome, which is also known as benign joint hypermobility, and also known as, people really flexy with their fingers and their joints and double jointing. They're also known as that. That gives me pain in a lot of different ways because my knees dislocate, my ankles twist a lot, and I sprain a lot, and I fall a lot. So I do use cannabis also to treat hypermobility syndrome. also recently they have found that I suffer from osteopenia. Osteopenia is a condition where bone mineral density is lower than normal. They also check the bone density by a T-score level. Basically, most specialists consider that, it's a precursor sort of like onto osteoporosis. But however, not every person that has osteopenia out there will develop osteoporosis. So, that is very important to get out to people. It possibly might, or it might not. In my case, it hasn't so far. Also suffer from musculoskeletal pain. That affects the muscles, ligaments, tendons, along with the bones. So, I do get a lot of bone pain and a lot of muscle pain with this. Also, I suffer from neuropathic pain, which comes from the peripheral nerves where there's damage. And obviously this I class as a secondary illness caused by the first illness that I mentioned, the CMT type 1A. Because the CMT has to do with the peripheral neuropathy side of things, and the neuropathic pain, I class it as a secondary illness. I haven't been told otherwise. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's a secondary illness caused by shark marrow tooth. I also suffer from chronic lower back pain and irritable bowel syndrome. Irritable bowel syndrome, it affects me in different ways. I get a lot of abdominal pain, a lot of discomfort, bloated a lot of times, and cannabis helps to stimulate my bowel movement, basically. So that's how cannabis helps with that side of things.
That is incredible.
Within my back, I have a disc that slips out of place, so it touches the nerves coming out of your spine, down the back of your spine, and it sort of like paralyzes me now and again. I also have a disc within my lumbar side of things that is shrinking, and I have another one that's dehydrating, and that's about it really. And just being allergic to loads of pharmaceutical chemical medication and a few vitamins.
Okay.
And even natural herbs.
Okay. So you've used cannabis to treat all these ailments?
Yes, I have.
Effectively. All right. So take us through when you started having these problems, and what have you been taking medication beforehand?
Well, the CMT is a genetic hereditary disease, really. So I was actually born with this condition. It's not something that just sprung up on me. I always had problems when I was little. The doctors could never find out what was wrong with me. I had rheumatic fever at the age of 8, and we believe that's excessive vitamin D, because if I have mega doses of vitamin D, it can really cause some serious problems to me. Might not have been, so we don't know. After my daughter was born, so we're going back possibly about 18, maybe 20 years ago. I am 40, so really, so like the first 2 decades of my life, I did have problems, but nothing was really detective. And then sort of like the second couple of decades of my life, everything has just been thrown at me, kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So basically, possibly in 1990 was the very first time I remember going to the hospital because my knee dislocated and paramedics couldn't put it back into place, and they had to rush me to Paddington, London, St Mary's Hospital actually. And they done an arthroscopy and realised that underneath my kneecap it was very rockily, so therefore, I have a lot of tendency. I do know now that that is actually due to the hypermobility syndrome and nothing to do with anything else. So then I didn't really go back or have any real issues with the doctors until possibly 95, beginning of 95, where I noticed that after childbirth, I was shaking a lot more. And I was having a lot more tremors, and that wasn't normal. So I then got investigated, and Paddington eventually found out what was wrong with me. And once they did, it just sort of like all went off from there. I mean, we're going from 95. Within 2 years, I'd had an operation, 2 operations to my feet for corrective surgery, where I'd been really ill. They didn't know whether I was going to walk again at the end of the 12 months. Now remember, when I started these operations in 97, I was walking badly, but I was still walking. So to be told at the end of all of that I might not walk again was a big shock. But I do walk, and I thank cannabis. Like my orthopedic surgeon says, I'm his little miracle. Yeah, I mean, on the second operation, before I went in, I kept saying to everyone around me, I'm not ready for this, because I felt really weak.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not ready for this. And I still went ahead and done it, and then my heart stopped for 3 minutes, and then they had to resuscitate me and bring me back. And yeah, so it wasn't an easy year that year, but I got through it. And it just gone on from there. And then in 2000, so, I was on pharmaceutical chemical medication, in and out of a wheelchair like a yo-yo, bedridden most of the time, felt like an alien really, and like a zombie, and I was vomiting constantly because of all the meds that I was on, including oral morphine. So it was very hard, really, really hard at the time. In 2000, I sort of like woke up, I'd like a wake-up call. And 6 months after that, it was like, the fogginess in my brain had gone, because I'd been without no farm meds for 6 months. So I could actually start thinking for myself again, rather than just have decisions made for me. When I stopped the farm meds, I started on cannabis, just cannabis on its own. And I just went on from there, because I have been using cannabis in a total of about 23, 24 years, because I am very honest about this. I class myself as a cannabis medical user for the past 12 years, because 12 years prior to that I did use cannabis recreationally, medically without realising, but I class myself as a recreational user, and I'm not a hypocrite, so I'm not going to go back and say, well, I've been using it medically for such and such amount of years, when it's not true. So for the past 12 years, I have just used medical cannabis. It was a big shock, because I had 9 specialists at this time, and one by one, I more or less got rid of them. And they kept saying that you can't discharge yourself from clinics, and I was just like, well, watch me. And I just did. I kept 2. My professor of neurology, which I now have known for about 17 years, and my orthopedic surgeon, which I have known since 1990, so about 22 years. So I trust these doctors with my life. I really do. And people out there might think, well, how can you? Well, because they support me. They support everything I do when it comes to cannabis. They see how much better I am now than I was 12 years ago. So I have the full support and backing of these doctors, of these professors behind me. My GP is 100% behind me. So I now also found out, only a couple of days ago, on Friday actually, that I've got ruptured my patella of my kneecap, because I took a big tumble in February. So, that's something else that I'm going to have to deal with now, which, we'll have to see how that goes. But yes, my doctors support me, and I think it's time for the medical cannabis people in the United Kingdom to go to their doctors, and get their doctor's support. Don't be worried about being judged. If that GP does not support you, then, they get paid every time you get to see them. Get rid of them, kick them to the curb. Get someone else that does support you, because they do exist. Yeah. I had to do that. Yeah. So they do exist, and they are out there. You know, don't just sit and wait for the knock at the door. Go and do something. Go and get your letters from your doctors. Go and get your medical team behind you 100%. It's taken me a long time to get where I am now with my doctors and my medical team. So it's not something that happens overnight. They have to see the difference in the patient. They have to see that the patient is no longer taking pharmaceutical medication, because this only works if you really come off all pharma meds, and that is the truth. You know, once you're off all pharma meds, then you can concentrate on treating yourself, because most people use medical cannabis either by vaporizing it or smoking it. I use it in tea. I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there that also use it in tea. I use it as a herb in my food. I make butter with it. I make cakes. So yeah.
So
sorry.
It's been incorporated fully into your life in every aspect.
Yes.
So you're growing this yourself?
Yes, I am growing. You know, I'll be really honest with you, Melanie. I understand when people don't want to say nothing, and I 100% I respect that, because everyone's an individual and everyone's got themselves to protect for their families. You know, I was raided on the 1st of July of 2010, 30 days before my wedding day. And I give up. I really do give up, because when I was raided and I actually explained to the sergeant, you know, that I was a medical cannabis user, I had letters stating what I was saying, and he still treated me like a criminal. I mean, the police took my Class B, which was my cannabis, and left my Class A, which was my prescribed morphine, on my bed. I had 5 bottles.
That is absolutely insane.
For the simple reason that my doctor was still giving me some scripts just in case cannabis wasn't touching where it was meant to be touching, and I just needed a top up of morphine, which I didn't. You know, I still put up with whatever I had to put up with. You know, there was 5 unopened bottles of morphine left on my bed when I came home that evening, because I was kept in the cell for 8 hours, 9 hours, something like that. I mean, they arrested me. They arrested my 16-year-old daughter, and you know, street bailed her. So that's one thing I had to deal with right at that moment. So they arrested my husband as well. In the end, you know, I got a solicitor, a duty solicitor, because I wasn't expected to be raided at the end of the day. You know, they got me a duty solicitor, and in these private rooms where you're just talking to them. You know, I'll be really honest with you, live on the show. I'm not gonna lie. I wanted to hit her. She said to me I was looking at 4 to 5 years for 14 plants. Pedophiles don't even get that. Yeah, all pedophiles out there, they listening. Yeah, you lot don't even get that. Just like Winston got 16 months for growing his own medication.
Yeah.
You know, someone got arrested in a school with Class A. Yeah, they got 2 years. They got 24 months. And my friend gets 16 months for growing medical cannabis in this country.
And tell us a bit about Winston and his illnesses.
Winston suffers from various medical issues. I wouldn't like to comment on most of it because I'm not really up to date on that. I do know that he suffers from very, very chronic back pain, which he suffered from an accident when he was 16 years old. So, best people really to try and get on the show for that could possibly be Paul, his son. So I'm sure if it's arranged that he'll probably be pleased.
Do you know, I've spoken with Paul already briefly. He wasn't too keen to come on, and obviously I understand. But you know,
I understand.
It's great though. I mean, it was really you who introduced me to Winston and his campaign. So you know, as his friends coming on and speaking on his behalf and really sharing the same story. It's so sad that this man is in jail for growing medical cannabis, and I went through this all last week, Tina, with just how many benefits this plant has. And
That's right, it has. I am proof of that. For 12 years, I am proof of that. I mean, Melanie, I've got letters from my doctor stating I must not stop growing cannabis and I must not stop using cannabis. And I am not lying about this. I have no reason to lie, you know. After I was raided, and I mean, in the end I got rid of the duty solicitor, got me a London solicitor that knew what he was doing more or less, and in the end I got caution. So that's really the roundup to my raid. The bombshell really comes that people don't really realise is when you come home from that 8-10 hours and then being grilled for about an hour, and you come home and you sit back and you just think, okay, now what? You know? Yeah. Where'd you go from here? I was a police virgin. You know, police never heard of me. They didn't know me from Adam. No, they didn't. Never even got a ticket. So the police didn't know who I was. I used to work for the youth offending team. That's how much of a criminal I was. So I don't, you know, I got fed up of sitting around for the knock at the door for a year and a half. I got sick and tired of living in fear, even though you still live in fear. Because any medical cannabis out there that is growing and says they don't live in fear, they're lying to themselves. Because every time there's a knock at the door, your heart sinks. You know, I don't care about the legality or illegality of this plant in the United Kingdom anymore, to be honest with you. I'm a British citizen. I live in my country. I live under common law. And I stand under common law. I do not harm anyone. I do not cause harm or loss to anyone. So, you know, who exactly are the victims here? The war's not on drugs. The war's on us. Us, the people. That's who the war's on.
Yeah.
You know, you feel victimized. You feel criminalized. Because you decide that you yourself, as a consenting adult, decide that because pharmaceutical conventional medication doesn't work for you and you go elsewhere and you get victimized for that. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. It's time something has to give. Something has to give. In this country, politicians don't want to know. Government don't want to know. Health ministers don't want to know. Drug ministers don't want to know. Home Office don't want to know. I've been there. I've tried it. I've been in touch with each and every single one of these organisations I've just mentioned. No. You know, I'm banging my head against a brick wall. That's what I've been told. Even by my local MP. You know, he's just so useless, that man, that it's unreal. But, you know, he said to me, you're banging your head against a brick wall. And I just thought, okay, well, this is the time where I go about my business, do what I have to do, because nothing's more important to me than being pain-free. Can you imagine how many medication I'd have to take to treat all these medical conditions?
Your poor body probably wouldn't survive it all. I mean, really, how many would you have to take?
It's funny to say that because in 2000, about 6 months after I came off all meds, my husband took me to the doctor, to our GP, and said to him, if Tina had taken all these medications that you've been prescribing her, like she's meant to, would she still be alive today? And he said no. This was my family doctor, for crying out loud. The man giving me them scripts. You know, am I losing it? No. Or this lot have been inhaling too much chemtrails and too much fluoride in the water. You know, something's wrong here. And it's time that the people started waking up to this. Because a lot of people are still asleep. They don't realise that these doctors don't want to cure you. You know, that's not their job. Well, it's supposed to be, but it's not. Most of them don't want to. Because most of them have got shares within pharmaceutical companies. You know, I'm very vocal about a lot of things and, you know, and a lot of subjects and a lot of issues, but if pharmaceutical companies are waiting on me to get rich quick, then, you know, they're going to go bankrupt so fast. Because I'm so against pharmaceutical medication. I really am. I believe if something's good for you, there's no side effects.
Yeah.
Because the minute there's side effects, there's something wrong there. You know, what's the side effect of cannabis? Okay, you guys get the munchies. Because, you know, I use it medically. And even before, when I used to use it recreationally, my friends couldn't understand why I didn't get the munchies. And they used to say to me, you're weird, you know. But now I understand. I didn't at the time, but now I do. So, believe me, I've tried to overdose on cannabis. You can't. It's impossible. You just can't. I said this to my professor of neurology. And another thing, Mels, see, the thing with me is that I tell my doctors that I'm growing. I tell my professors of neurology that I'm growing. Because all of this goes on my notes. See, this is what people need to wake up to. That if these doctors get called up in court, their oath as doctors is to you.
That's right.
And to no one else. They're there for you. And if you've got a good patient, doctor, specialist, professor, whatever relationship, then you will realise that. You need to be open, you need to be honest with these guys that are helping you, these guys that are treating you. Because pharmaceutically, they're not. Some of them might believe they are. Some of them might actually know what they're doing. And some might not. It's all a gamble and it's all a game.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. It's all about money. Money and power.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say to me, why isn't cannabis legal? And I say to them, well, because of lots of reasons. There isn't just one particular reason. Money is the biggest one. I believe at the top of all of that pyramid. And then it just comes down from there, really. And we're just the guinea pigs at the bottom.
Yeah. Well, what I don't understand, which makes perfect sense to me, and I've posted these photos all over Facebook, is, when you walk around Holland and you walk into a coffee shop and you find a vending machine, and instead of selling Snickers or Twix or Mars bars, they're selling blister pack marijuana joints.
Quality.
And this is it. I think to myself, this is really the way it should be.
Yeah, it is.
Why is it such a big deal? Why can this happen in one place but not in another? And here we have the lowest drug addiction rate in Europe.
Melanie, I believe, just going back to Winston on a note there, I believe that they've imprisoned Winston's body, but at his head, that he's grown plantations and plantations of that. Because they can't imprison one's mind. And when you do something like this, especially in the UK, the UK must be one of the most difficult country to break when it comes to cannabis. Or to most things for that matter. But, I find it that with cannabis, it's just a dead end road, to be honest with you. So, for a judge to judge you on something that God gave you, people claim that it's their religious belief when it comes to the plant. In Holland you have the so-called freedom as such to go into a coffee shop, like you say, or to just go down the road and there's a vending machine that's selling you a packet of this quality of cannabis or the other. That would never be acceptable.
Yeah.
Britain's too much into their backward way of thinking. The politicians, they have to go. We've got to get rid of this law and any other law because they're all corrupted. And that's where corruption comes into it. See, I believe that's got a lot to do with the fact that cannabis isn't legal.
Yeah.
I believe that for me, cannabis is not only part of my life, but it's what keeps me living. Because without it, I'm bedridden and wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
And that, I don't want to go back to that. I really don't want to go back to that. I'm not saying that I don't have pain now and again. Yes, I do. Because cannabis, like I say, helps. Doesn't cure me, it helps me. An enormous amount. And I'm a great believer of that. And I do fight for medical cannabis within the United Kingdom. And I am a great supporter of recreational medical uses.
Tina, just wanted to ask you, how does your family feel about this whole thing?
My family's divided, to be honest with you. My mum's only just started telling people that I use medical cannabis and being proud of it. Because like she says herself, it's been a long time since she's seen me in the wheelchair. So, for my mum, it's taken a long time for her to accept it. the rest of my family are just like, you know, you do get criminalised by your own people. You know, don't get me wrong, you do. That's why I believe that you find your own family when it comes to this. You know, you end up meeting people that feel the same way about you, think the same way about you. It could take you years to feel that they're like family to you, but that can happen. That's not impossible, because if people think the same way and they support what you're doing and they're doing the same, then, you know, there's a connection there immediately. With my family, even CMTs, the hereditary genetic, and none of my family have got it. So I share something in common with people that, you know, I call them my CMT family on Facebook. I do, you know, and I worry about them, and I go on their page when I don't see them for a few days and private message them, and yeah, you know, I class them my CMT family because I share something with these people that I don't even share with my mum, and I'm glad I don't get me wrong, you know, but I see them as my CMT family, and they're great people, and they're a lot more stronger than me, and I do admire them because some of them have got children with CMT. I was what I class one of the fortunate ones because my daughter doesn't have this gene, so she's free of it, which it can be passed down. There's a 50-50 chance, so I didn't pass this gene on to her, which is a good thing. Yeah. So I do admire the parents that deal with themselves plus their children.
Yeah. It's a very difficult one to explain to people who are still unfortunately living with the hereditary prejudices and old dogmas of cannabis as this thing that makes you lazy, that makes you...
You know, I'm a great believer that you need to first and foremost accept who you are and what you are. And don't worry about how other people see you. I didn't move after I was raided. Yeah, and out of possibly 10 close houses, possibly 2 people don't talk to me, and the rest do. So, you know, it's just narrow-minded people. But to be honest with you, I'm glad they don't talk to me because, you know, I just used to say hello just to be polite. So I mind my own business. I stick to my life and what I do. So I think people feel like that mainly because of, quite possibly because their friends don't do it, or because they don't know enough people that do it. I used to feel like that before I actually met the cannabis community on Facebook. I have been involved in cannabis and hydroponics and all of that since 2004. So I have been around for a long time, even though only 2 years I've come public. Because for the past 2 years I haven't really had nothing to lose. What I had to lose, I'd already lost the day I was raided. So I lost the job that I loved. I've got a lot of self-satisfaction by helping these kids. So, you know, what was there to lose? I'd lost my medication. You know, so I had nothing else to lose. That was it. It was out in the open. It made the BBC. It made the local papers. You know, how much man-hours was spent on that raid for a caution? How many man-hours, you know, and money was spent on that with the helicopter out and everything. You'd think that, like, you know, I had, like, bombs going on in my house. I was waiting for the terrorist squad to come from my door. When I arrived in my house on the 1st of July 2010, I had between 12 to 14 police officers. I even said to them, are you lot one for each plant or something? You know, because I was just like, well, come on, get real. I was like, what exactly are you lot looking for? You know, because the only crime you're going to find is the one that's upstairs. You know, the morphine, prescription. That's the only class A you're going to find at this house. I think the only class B you're going to find at this house is what you've already found. You know, so that's it. At the end of the day, I had nothing else to lose. So yeah, you know, it is time to go public. You know, I understand that before people get raided that, you know, it don't really sink in. But after you've been raided, it's like, well, you know what, bring it on. And I mean that. Because I want my day. I want my day to be able to tell the world, you know, how unjust the law is in the United Kingdom. You know, what happens to families that get destroyed and torn apart. You know, Winston might come out, you don't know if he's got a house. You don't know if he's got a roof over his head. You know, these are all the consequences of medical cannabis people being raided. Who's there to pick up the pieces at the end of it? No one. You just got to get on with it. Brush yourself down, get up, brush yourself down, raise your head up high and get on with it. Accept what happened and get on with it. It's the only way you get through it. You know, for a year and a half, what happened to me nearly destroyed me. You know, one friend said to me one night, she really gave me a kick up my ass, and I needed that, to be honest with you. She said to me, T, nothing breaks you. She says, and this shit ain't gonna break you. And I just thought, you know what, you're right, I've been through so much in my life up until then. Operations, hospitals, doctors, illnesses, family breakups, you name it, so much had happened. And I thought, yeah, you're right, this ain't gonna break me. And it didn't. It did for a while. You know, I think everyone's entitled to have that mourning moment, or months, or weeks, or years, whatever, however people feel comfortable with. But it does get to a point in a time when you need to think, you know, time to move on now, time to look ahead. Because for a year and a half I was buying off the dealer in the street. I was doing, you know, the reason why I started growing really, it was so I wouldn't have to deal with drug dealers. So I didn't have to go to the man in the street, you know, and get robbed and, you know, and buy crap. So no.
Yeah,
no,
been there, done that.
I do not support organised crime.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, any British politician that supports prohibition, as far as I'm concerned, is supporting organised crime in this country. Prohibition is not the solution. Education. Treating those that need to be treated. And educate the new generation. Not feed them a bunch of lies. You know, tell them the truth about cannabis. There's so much proof out there. Professor Les Iverson, Professor David Nutt, Professor Roger Pertwee. These are all scientists that studied this plant for over 40 years. You know, how much longer can you study a plant? You know, I mean, prohibition has been going on for over 83 years. It's nearly a century. You know, and people still tell me to be calm. Nah. You know, we need to wake up and smell the coffee and get real here. It's because we've been calm, yeah, that it's gone on for so long. So no, it's time. Time to rise up. Time for the cannabis community to come from underground, wherever they are. Yeah, and rise up to the surface. Unite. Because united, I believe that, you know, we might prevail. But the way we're doing it, no, we're not. We're just going, you know, to dead ends. We need to show the force behind this. And I am talking about grow shops. I am talking about bong shops. Because at the end of the day, the cannabis community does fund these places. You know, so we need everyone behind us. I understand that under the legalities of the United Kingdom laws that grow shops cannot be associated with cannabis. I understand that, you know, but, you know, it's just the way it goes, really.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Tina, you have exhibited unbelievable spirit, and this is exactly what we need, is people like yourself fronting this fight, because it is a worthwhile cause. It really is. As I said to you when we spoke earlier on this week, this plant can single-handedly save the planet. And we very much advocate and ask people to, you know, take the risk and start growing. And it is a huge commitment, but they cannot, if everybody is doing it, they cannot come down on all of us. All right? Even if you don't smoke marijuana.
What are they going to do? They're going to clog up the courts?
Yeah.
And waste taxpayers' money?
Well, if everyone's doing it, Tina, they can't do it to all of us. Let's strengthen numbers.
A couple of days ago, and actually it's from my MP. It's not a very nice letter, actually, but it states that you know, it costs the UK 15.4 billion a year, you know, to deal with prohibition.
Yeah.
So, you know,
It's crazy.
why not spend that money in education?
Absolutely. We better spend elsewhere. Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. They talk about a healthcare system that's suffering, you know.
That's right. That's right. You know, it is suffering. The Conservatives, they're not budging in this country. They're really not. I have not found one Conservative that will support me. I did find one Liberal Democrat MP that was quite, you know, supportive, and he understood, and he had actually said, you know, that money would be better spent on educating programs and things like that rather than prohibition.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there are some out there that are on our side, but, you know, they're very few in between. You know, today it came out in the paper about a judge in Sheffield, you know, who claims he's going to sentence every cannabis user and every cannabis grower, regardless of the new guidelines that came into action on the 27th of this month, of last month, so.
That's ridiculous.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And it's quite sickening when you read things like that.
Mm. They're doing it to scare us. I mean, to scare you guys, so to speak. But
I'm not scared anymore. I was, because the first time, it's like I said to another friend of mine that was, he's also a medical user, he's also dusty. And I said to him, I said, you know, mate, I said, now, if they come, I said, I know what to expect. The first time I didn't. So, it's not nice every time they come, but, you know, I'll know more or less what to expect from them. I'll be a bit better prepared this time than I was last time.
Yeah.
So, if they want to come, then we will go, and we will go to ground, because I won't plead in magistrates for the simple reason that I'm not going to be sentenced by a judge who's got back in the Stone Age days kind of views. No way in hell am I going to allow that. I've got enough medical support, enough medical evidence behind me to go all the way to ground. If I'm going to be sentenced, I shall be sentenced by members of the public. You know? By members of the jury.
yeah.
So,
As I was saying, Tina, I've advocated that everyone should grow cannabis, even if you don't smoke it. Just the benefits of juicing it. There's so many health benefits in juicing cannabis and drinking in teas for your entire body.
due to the irritable bowel syndrome, I don't know if anyone that's listening has got this, but I do find that juicing raw vegetables, it helps. And juicing my fruit helps a lot as well. So I could go for 4 or 5 days without any bowel movement. And with cannabis, I have bowel movement every day.
Yeah, incredible stuff.
So it actually stimulates your bowels. So yes, it does help because, you know, it helps with the muscles, it helps with the pain, it helps with the shaking, with the cramps, it helps with everything really. I've also got a frozen left shoulder where they were meant to be injecting me with steroids. And I said to my GP, which he's known me for about 7 years, because I've been where I am now for about 7 years. And I said to him, I said, off the record, I said, if it was the other way around, that, you know, I was telling you to do this, would you do it? And he said to me, no. I said, thank you. I said, I don't want it. You know, my GP is very honest with me, because I'm very honest with him. When I told him I was growing again, he just said to me, I don't want to hear that. I said, no, you do want to hear it. Because you need to log this on my notes. You know? I said to him, we've come to the end of the line because, you know, we wrote to everyone, we tried static X, you know, no, out of the question, it ain't happening. I went to the pain clinic, just a quick note on this. I went to the pain clinic for the first time a couple of weeks ago after 14 years. Because the Sativex business, when I got there, I was offered everything from ketamine, okay, to tramadol, listen to these people, to tramadol, to oral morphine, yeah, you know, ketamine, come on, you know, is this a joke? You know, they're that desperate to palm these meds off on people because they can't sell them. You know, I was really shocked. So the first part of this pain clinic appointment, you know, he run it, and then the second part of it, I sort of like give him an educating lesson within science and philosophy and everything else that comes with it, really. And he did listen. Do you know what I mean? I did give him his dues. He didn't give me what I wanted, which was raw cannabis. And I did tell him, look, you know, if you're going to be dealing with me, then you need to know. He said to me, what? I said, well, I'm growing my cannabis. He said to me, oh, okay. He was in shock. I said to him, no. I said, you put that on my notes. Yeah, I said, because you're my pain clinic people. And you need to note down what you're doing with me. And he did. You know, I think a lot of people just go to see these doctors and these specialists because they've got like big letters in front of their name or behind their name, wherever it goes. Do you know what I mean? It's like people get a bit, oh my God, you know, kind of a bit anxious and a bit intimidated kind of thing. Well, don't be. You know, go in there, be yourselves, and just tell these people how it is. Don't wait. You know, listen to what they've got to say. You know, and then towards the end of any appointment with any of these guys, you know, you just tell them what it is and how it is. You know, and they need to support you because they swear on oath to their patient. So, you know, they're there for you, and if they don't, report them.
Yeah.
Get rid of them and get someone else.
Absolutely, Tina. Thank you very much for all your information, Tina. It's been such a pleasure to have you on our show tonight. Because if we can't choose what to do with our own minds, bodies and souls, we are certainly not free.
Exactly.